happy, wonderful December 31st, the eve of a new year. And however you're going to choose to keep New Year's Eve later today, hopefully with the blessing of a wonderful meal, and hopefully, as we like to say in my circles, clean and sober as best you can, and safe. We indeed are so grateful that you've chosen to be with us to help us, if you will, ring out the old and begin to reflect and hope for, and indeed, obviously, prepare to work for 2024. Our opening words today. I often think that's God somewhere, but I know that's not. Our opening words today come from our hymnal. They are 563. And please, if you'll intently and open-heartedly listen to these words. I'm sorry, hang on one second. A person will worship something, have no doubt about it. We may think our tribute is paid in secret in the dark recesses of our hearts, but it will out. That which dominates our imaginations and our thoughts will determine our lives and character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we worship, for what we are worshiping, we are becoming. And in your bulletin cover, there is our chalice lighting words. If you'll please recite them with me. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. One of the things that we more often do as we prepare for the coming of a new year is there are deep reflections. And many of those deep reflections have to do with our relationships, whether it be with family, with friends, and in some cases even people we've never met yet. It just is part of what we are as human beings. And I found this, I call it a hymn, and it was done by the, there's no other way to put it, world famous, world-renowned group called ABBA, which ironically enough is the Aramaic word for God, or actually the interpretation of God, which is the equivalent of Papa or Daddy. Which I found fascinating. I don't know the backstory of how they came to name themselves, but it's called The Way Old Friends Do. And it reflects on perhaps a kinder, gentler way of approaching each other as we end out the old year and begin the new. It's not a difficult song to sing, and I tell you that because if I can sing it, anybody can sing it. So, if those of you who are willing and able, if you would rise, and you have, I do believe, does everybody have a copy? No. Okay, then well, let's take a few seconds to make sure you have the words. That's important. That's important. They're going to get them. Oh. Yep, here they come. Madame?
All right, we'll just take it really slow. You
and I can share the silence, finding comfort together, the way old friends do. And after fights and words of violence, we make up with each other the way old friends do. Times of joy and times of sorrow, we will always see it through. Oh, I don't care what comes tomorrow. We can face it together the way old friends do. You and I can share the silence.
Okay.
What?
I didn't know we were doing it 2 times, sorry.
Of course we are.
All
There's
right,
2 verses.
we can do it 3 times.
You wrote 2 verses.
Finding something
together the way old friends do. And after fights and words of violence, we make up with each other the way old friends do. Times of joy and times of sorrow, we will always see it through. Oh, I don't care what comes tomorrow. We can face it together the way old friends do. There'll be a test next week, so learn the words. Thank you. Thank you. Our responsive reading this morning is number 445 in your hymnal again. Excuse me. If I can find it. There we go. And it's called The Womb of Stars, and it's brought to us by Joy Atkinson, who is a very popular writer and poet in the Unitarian Universalist movement. And allow me, please, to begin, and if you'll follow me in tandem. The womb of stars embraces us. Remnants of their fiery furnaces pulse through our veins. We are of the earth. We breathe and live in the breath of ancient plants and beasts. Our fingers trace the curves carved in clay and stone by forebears unknown to us. We gather anew this day to celebrate our common heritage. Thank you. Okay. We now come to that portion of our service that we call our joys and our sorrows. And one of the things that I asked each and every one of you to do as you entered the sanctuary was to jot down on that 3x5 card, perhaps all of the sorrows or some of the sorrows that you want to release that you've experienced in 2023. And it is in that spirit, before we actually get to that portion of our service, that we do what we do now. We contemplate those things that have brought us encouragement. We contemplate those things that have brought us joy. And of course, it is appropriate for us to contemplate that which has brought us sorrow, pain, in some cases, even what you would call tragedy. And yet, it is doing so in that manner that we affirm in a symbolic, shall we call it a more tangible way, a deep commitment to leaning upon each other. Because as Ram Dass, the American philosopher and in some mentalities guru, used to say, the main purpose of our life is that we are here to walk each other home. And so we need to lean upon each other to celebrate those great things and to be there for each other during those things that are indeed not so great. So let us begin that. A couple of things I'd like to share, both in the manifestation of joy, if I may. Those of you who have attended service with some regularity and have gotten to know me know that recently I announced that, pardon me, I had been re-diagnosed with prostate cancer. As I like to call it, prostate cancer part 2. And I don't feel like Tom Cruise. Anyway, we went to 3 different doctors and 3 different specialists and had 3 different consultations. And on the 10th of January, I will be having my final teleconference with my surgeon. And we have opted to utilize a surgical procedure that requires them to actually freeze, what they call a cryogenic freezing of the prostate. I have been referred to as a pretty cold fellow at times, so I don't know. But anyway, that's what's going to happen. I don't know the exact date. I'll be at Millard Fillmore Hospital in Buffalo for only 1 day. It's an outpatient procedure. They keep assuring me that my wife will not have to be wearing basic black in the foreseeable future, nor that this will not be the shortest ministry in Unitarian Universalist history. So we're gratified, and that is indeed a great joy. Your intentions, your positive affirmations are deeply appreciated because your support is, I'll use the word, it's vital to me to help keep my spirits up while modern medical science does its thing. And the other joy I have is that yesterday, my wife called to me from the back of our house, and she said, the dog is gone. And our 14-year-old Boston Terrier, Mr. Buck, decided to slip his lead and make a mad dash out to what we call Route 20, which is the fastest, easiest way to become splat dog. And I don't think I've moved faster than that in 20 years, but I went from 0 to 60 in 2.7 seconds and ran barefoot through all kinds of rocks.
Oh my God.
My little feet hurt, but I scooped up Mr. Buck before he got to Route 20, and he is calm, safe, and asleep at home in bed while I keep eating Tylenol today. But I'm deeply joyful for that. And now, if you would, is there anyone who would please like to come up? We do have a microphone to share a joy or a sorrow. This would be the time to do it.
I have one.
So does she. Ladies
We'll
first.
form a line.
Oh, form a line. There you go.
Mine's just easy. I I just have a concern that every day I find out that a friend, a relative has COVID, flu, RSV, RSVP, who knows? But I'm just, my message this morning is be careful. Is there some really bad stuff going around now? And Teresa texted this morning that she needs prescriptions picked up at the drugstore because she's sick. So it's close to us. So just be careful.
Thank you. Thank you.
I got my very own microphone.
Oh, lucky you. He's special.
It's the trade-off for managing Zoom, right?
That's right.
Anyway.
A benefit, yes.
Yeah. There was what I considered a really encouraging article in the paper. And it's long range, and probably none of us will be around to benefit, but long range, this is really good. There are reliable forecasts that indicate that the world population is going to peak, not perhaps within our lifetimes, but within those of people younger than us, and that it will turn sharply downward and retain that trajectory for a very long time, to the point where it'll retreat to levels perhaps that existed around 1900 or something like that in the coming few hundred years, which is way different from, what had been imagined. At least, it seemed as though it was rising exponentially forever, and it was going to be bad for climate change and everything else. And this is very encouraging. So, maybe we can't enjoy it right now, but boy, this is a very encouraging thing. So I'm going to light a candle for that.
Thank you.
And mine is a concern, but also partially a joy. My dad's had his flu shot and everything, but he still got the flu. He was in the hospital this past week with double pneumonia. And he's okay now. He's home. He's recovering. The family's rallying around and taking care of him and my stepmother. He's 88, and my stepmother's 87. And she's still driving. She's probably suffering from dementia on top of that. So that's what makes it dangerous for her to drive. And we're trying to get her to slow down on the driving because she's gotten lost, even in her own hometown. Police had to find her and bring her back this past week. And anyways, I'm going to be taking probably one day a month of family sick time at work, which I can do, and I got plenty of sick time. I'm going to, on the 3rd of the month, when they get paid, they like to drive all the way to Olean from Wallsville. That's 35 miles distance between Wallsville and Olean and back. And that's where the nearest Walmart and places like that are. And she likes to drive there. Well, of course, she had a hissy that I offered to drive. That was taking her driving privileges away and stuff like that, which is not it at all. So I just decided to compromise a little bit. I said, well, I'm not trying to take you driving away from you, but, can I just kind of tag along with you guys? So on the 3rd of every month, I'm going to take a day off and drive down there. But if it's real bad winter, I told her, we're going to go on my car to get your groceries if the weather's bad. I have steel-studded winter tires in my car. I said, don't give me any bull crap. I told her. I said, no, we'll go on my car. Because I call my car the Kia Mountain Goat. Anyways, that's it. It's just a concern, take care of my parents, and my joy is the fact that my dad is much better now.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hesitated to get up and say this morning, but this morning on CBS News, Anderson Cooper gave a brief commentary on how he's been living with grief his entire life. You saw it? Wasn't it wonderful? But it really hit home to me because 53 years ago today, I met my husband. So New Year's Eve is always very bittersweet for me. And this will be my 9th New Year's Eve without him, because I've been missing him terribly since 2015. And, but Anderson Cooper said he started grieving at the age of 10 when he lost his father, and then his brother committed suicide, and then he lost his mother, Gloria Vanderbilt. So he said his New Year's resolution, he said he doesn't usually make resolutions, but his New Year's resolution this year was to try to let go of the grief and try to welcome joy and happiness. If anybody knows how to do that, let me know. But he did say that, and I have always believed this, that everyone around you is dealing with grief. And if they aren't now, they will be. And I know most of you here, it has touched profoundly in the most recent year or past few years. So I hold you all in my heart, and I wish you a very healthy and happy New Year.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I want a new knee. This getting old with disabilities is for the birds. Yeah, you know what they say.
Yeah, I remember too, I once was a spring chicken, and now I just consider myself a boiled fowl. But regardless, I tell my wife I'm your boiled fowl. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Our heart is truly with you. And I normally don't comment on joys and concerns, but I will say this. Anyone who has ever experienced grief, and as the dear lady said, that's, if it hasn't touched you yet, it will touch you before you leave, so to speak, this earthly experience. Has to come to recognize that grief never ends. We manipulate it, we change it, we try to cope with it, but it is that grief many times that also hopefully can be transmuted and transcended, even momentarily, for the positive memories and the wonderful experiences. I hate to be quoting, Bill Shakespeare, but better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. And that's what keeps me going at times in my grief. So indeed, I hope that helps. We now come to that portion of our service known as the offering. We encourage you to be as generous as you possibly can be, because it is a fact of life that it is through your generosity and only your generosity that it indeed makes this ministry possible, and we want to be able to share what we have for generations to come. stirrings of compassion blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. As I mentioned earlier, we gather, and whether that be in churches or in taverns or restaurants or in our homes, we reflect on this thing called the New Year. And usually we begin that process by reflecting the things that have occurred to us in the past year. And hopefully there'll be more joys than sorrows. No one can guarantee us how many joys we're going to have, and truly no one can guarantee how many sorrows. Religion, for as far back as we can possibly recall, and further back than we have no ability to recall, has constantly come up with many different things to comfort and indeed perhaps even guide us through the sorrows and vicissitudes of our lives, and also to help us to share, indeed, the joys of our experience. And yet many times when we are confronted with those things that are called sorrows, trials, tribulations, again, Bill Shakespeare, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, we come to the conclusion that a lot of religion and indeed a lot of great thinking and a lot of wonderfully well-intentioned people, many times it feels like nothing more than creative rationalization. And we still must keep calm and carry on. We must push forward, and hopefully, and I know some people would disagree, but I like Nietzsche, that which does not kill us strengthens us. I don't always believe that crap, but because a lot of times when it feels like it's killing me, I'm not particularly believing that I'm going to get through the other end. But that's why we have each other. As I mentioned, we lean upon each other. And again, to quote Ram Dass again, the idea of walking each other home, whatever you contemplate that to be. With some people, it's the belief in a better so-called life after this earthly sojourn ends. With others, it's just trying to pull it together to make some sense and give us some substantial meaning for what we conceive ourselves to be in the here and the now. Your choice, as they say. But one of the things we do in the beginning of every year is we contemplate these things called New Year's resolutions. You know what they are. It's the things we completely ignore on January 2nd. Or we ignore to a great deal. And there is a proclivity in religious thinking that that which we refer to as God, or as my hero, the Reverend Dr. John Shelby Spong, he refers to this idea of beyond our own so-called limited consciousness as the ground of being, that there is some kind of a force that is mysterious and beyond our wildest human imaginings that pulls us all together, and somehow we have consistently and hopefully conscientiously tried to make sense of it, again, since as far back as we can remember. But there is this notion that this thing called God, or the ground of being, is the absolute zenith, the absolute apex, the absolute perfection. And it even states it in Scripture, be ye perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. And yet we come to the conclusion, if we study human psychology and again human history, that the last thing the human animal can claim, the very last thing, is even the absolute semblance of so-called perfection. And yet somehow or another we consistently strive toward it, like we know what that is, like we know. And of course you have the metaphysical folk who tell you, you'll know that you know that you know. Usually nothing. Because the idea of perfection is so transcendental, so beyond our human experience, and yet we if you have ever looked in these, I don't know if you've ever been to these bookstores where they have, mountains of books, and I'm not being facetious, literally up to the ceiling, and they're wholesale, meaning you can buy them for $1 a book. Stuff that used to cost $25, $35, you'll get it for $1 a book. And the self-help section is about as high as Mount Kilimanjaro. It's unbelievable. Everybody's got a method, everybody's got a way, a path, a journey, again, because I have my background in a variety of traditions, we'll teach you how to tighten your chakras, clean your karma for only $4.95. Yes, $4.95. But wait, that's not all. Having a problem with a past life, we can fix that too. And yet other people, obviously more traditional, they believe that if they put their faith in a guru, in a central figure, call it a savior, call it a messiah, call it whatever you will, that somehow or another they have achieved some level of this thing called perfection. I'm here to tell you, stop it. Stop it. We tend to become more and more neurotic, and in some cases, I really believe even psychotic, the more we strive for something that is as nebulous as this thing called perfection. I love the way it's put in self-help parlays. I do not seek perfection, I seek progress. And that speaks volumes to me. And it speaks volumes to me because it's a kinder, more gentle way of expressing what all of us in the human condition seek: growth, evolution, development. But instead of making it complicated and reading every book in that Mount Kilimanjaro of self-help, we have been given throughout history some fundamental basics that we need, that if we took a look at, we might just learn something. And one of those things is, again, I go back to self-help groups. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. My God, how we've complicated life. How we've complicated it. What do I mean by simple? For example, I'm going to use my pet subject, because I happen to be one of them preacher types, theology. You can drown in theology and even philosophy. And yet you have someone who is one of the, if you will, apex of theology and philosophy, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And what does he say? He says, kindness is my religion. You don't need a temple, a church, a mosque, a synagogue. All you need is the desire to be kind. And if you can't be kind, please step out of the way. Step out of the way so as to allow people to be kinder and more gentle to each other. If we're seeking perfection, we tend to be something, and think about it in your own life. we tend to be something that manifests itself as called being judgmental. Because when we get better, when we're a little smarter, faster, etc., we start looking back at those people who aren't, forgetting where we came from. And so the idea of simplicity and the idea of not being judgmental and to strive to accept people just the way we find them. It's one of the reasons Unitarian Universalism has such a, in my opinion, transforming power. It's because we are living intentionally. We are saying to each and every person who crosses that threshold, I don't care where you've been, I don't care where you are, I don't even care where you're going. I mean, obviously we care, but you get what I'm saying. What I know is that right where you stand, you are as perfect as you can get. You are making progress. I've done that with people when years ago, I used to run I was a soup kitchen director. No soup for you. But anyway, I did that once. I found the most transcendental moments in that environment because we all were in it together. We were all not striving to judge. We were all not striving to condemn, to make better, to move toward perfection. First off, we're trying to survive. And if you can, it's like, if you can sense how that must feel, and many of you, I'm sure, might have had those experiences, in that process, all of the smugness, the judgmentalism, all of that stuff begins to get minimized, and we begin to see not the other, but we see ourselves in that person. And prayerfully, hopefully, they see themselves in us, so that in that sense of unity, we can work together. Is everybody gonna, quote, hit the same goals and marks? No, that would make life almost irrelevant. It would make it untenable. Not everybody, this is not, nobody's playing beat the clock. Everybody is where they can be based on how they came into this life. And so there doesn't have to be any major complications. I mean, sure, people do it and they're going to do it. And, it's like my friend here said about the population. Well, we're never going to see the eradication of all the religions and ideologies and so forth that are absolutely God blessed certain that if you just followed their way, everything would be all right. Everything would be all right. No, it has to get a lot more simple. It has to get away with dropping the perfectionism. It has to get away with accepting people as we find them. It has to be within, whether you study the teachings of a Jesus or a teachings of a Buddha or whatever, if you stripped away all of the narratives, the dynamic teaching, which is the dynamic tension that's the high wire we walk on, tries to teach us what I've been talking about. Loving yourself. How many times have I said to people, I don't care if you love each other. I'd be happy if you just liked each other. But I'd be even happier if you liked yourself. There is more devastation and damage caused by self-loathing than you can possibly imagine. And that's why we gather together to support each other, so we can heal some of that, but not in a judgmental way, not in any way that causes people to feel less than, but in a way that says, you're perfect, just the way you are. Just the way you are. How many times have you thought about maybe your mom or your dad or somebody that was in a position to be your parental figure, your caregiver, and maybe they weren't that particularly nice to you. Maybe there was even some abuse and such. And then you look back on it and you say, if you think back, And that's not to mitigate your feelings, and it's not to eradicate the experience or diminish the experience, but we must comprehend that what we experience in life at the hands of another many times is the best they can possibly do based on what they've experienced. Based on what they've experienced. And so what we do is we cognitize that and say, okay, we can be better. We will be better. Not perfect, but better. And we're going to try to do this year what we may not have been able to do last year. Do we contemplate or just let it go, drive us crazy what happened last year? No. We have to be able to release and let go that which no longer serves us. And by the way, your positive experiences and your negative experiences both have a payoff, both have a lesson, if you want to use that word, to teach you. I remember being in ministerial college and I had a dean, and we had a love-hate relationship. I loved her, she hated my guts. That's not true. That's not true. I'm an acquired taste, and I'll admit that. And she just hadn't decided which flavor I was. So we had some tension. But I went away from that not being bitter. I got better. And the reason I got better was I refused to hold on to the animosity. Even, I can't say I ever hated the person, but the animosity, the angst, if you will, and recognize that they were doing the best they knew how with what they had at their culturalization, their religious upbringing, all of it. And they were teaching me not sometimes what I needed to become, what I wanted to aspire to, but what I didn't wish to aspire to because it wasn't me, because it wasn't serving me. And it was in doing that kind of an exercise with her and with other people in my life that I find that I am indeed less judgmental, more open-minded, and yes, I know people don't like when I say this sometimes, not you folks, of course, you being the highly evolved spiritual beings that you are, but open-hearted. Many times in the scriptures, they talk about hard-heartedness. Resentment. It's a killer. It's an absolute killer. It destroys your mind. Not literally, of course, but it just wreaks havoc with your life. And I've often said, mind is the builder, mind is the destroyer. How do you use your mind? I encourage you, as we approach this coming year, to be more positive, to be more affirmative, to accept and allow anything and everything and look upon it, hopefully, as something that will enhance and move you forward in your growth. Because at the end of it all, when we lay these flesh suits down, we leave a legacy. Will it be a legacy of progress, or will we just keep repeating history because we continue to somehow have it in our head that we can do the same silly, sad things and get different results? It's when we change our consciousness, when we look upon it with, like the people say, and things with an attitude of gratitude, with an attitude of openness of mind, of heart, that's when we can have the kind of year that is coming. And that's when we can begin to build a life not only for ourselves, but for each other, to the end, which is the end of, which is the prime directive, if I may talk in Star Trek here. The prime directive is to create a world, not the next world, right here and right now, to create a world that works for everyone. Justice, peace, love. We've got to stop thinking about it as a pipe dream, a fantasy. We have the skills, we have the mind, we have the soul to make it a reality. And so it is in that spirit that I ask you to consider some of the things we've shared with you this Sunday morning. And perhaps when you're sitting, before the clock strikes 12, what is it you want to make a commitment to for the coming year? What shall be, and if I may use this term advisedly, what is your divine mission? What do you want to make some progress in? Not only yourself, of course, because that's what we've been talking about for the last bit of time, but also, is there something that really irks you? Is it hunger? Is it grief? Is it so many of the things? And if you find that one thing that really, really, okay, as Andy Rooney used to say, really bothers me, okay, then maybe you want to choose that to work on. Like I chose working in a soup kitchen, and I do believe you're going to find some interesting moments where not only your consciousness will be raised, which is a fancy way of saying you will experience a very positive change in your life that may indeed surprise you. We come to that portion now. I handed out to you 3x5 cards. And I've noticed a lot of times in our churches, there's not a lot of ritual. And yet there is. It's like we struggle with it. We want to divest ourselves of the old theologies, the old teachings, and so forth. And so we divest ourselves of the old customs. Emerson left his church fighting over what? Holy Communion. How to deal with that. It was a ceremony, it was a ritual, and it caused a big stir. So much of it for Emerson that he left. But regardless of that, it is my contention that ceremony and ritual are just that, symbolic gestures that unify us as individuals into a collective. And in doing so, affirm for us the ability to work not just as individuals, but together. And many times we don't take the time to sit in a meditative state or a contemplative state. And what we need to do is just that. And so I gave you these in the hope that what you would write down is anything and everything that you could think of. And I apologize, some of you, I handed it to you about 60 seconds before the service, but I wanted to make sure everybody who chose to had an opportunity to participate. Write down those things that irk you, that you don't want in your life, that no longer serve any good purpose in your experience, in your expression. This helps you solidify what they call an affirmation, to make firm in your consciousness, in your mentality, and say, ooh, wow, I've got 3 or 4 things here I haven't really thought about in a really long time, but some of this is pretty serious stuff. And that's the point, to become conscious. And then the symbolic flame, which has always been symbolic of enlightenment, of purification, and in this case, release. In ancient times when sacrifice was made, well, that's probably the best example I could use, it was done so to release unto a higher power, if I may use that phrase, that term, so that we can make an expectation or an anticipation of good in our lives. So what you're going to do in just a few seconds is you're going to take these, and I'm going to say a prayer, and then I'm going to take my little list and release and let go of those things in my year that I believe no longer serve me, and because nature abhors a vacuum. If you release those things, you are making room in your consciousness, in your mentality, my opinion, to draw into your life something better, something more growth-provoking. Is this magic? No. Is it what I call wishcraft? No. It's symbolic so that you can formulate, when you release this, what it is that you would like to experience for your highest good, for your growth, and not your perfection, but your progress. So, if you'll join me in a moment of prayer, we gather as brothers and sisters, united in body, in mind, ultimately in spirit, knowing that this ground of being, this source, this presence, somehow, that is so mysterious to us, we want to believe that it guides us, upholds us, sustains us, and moves us forward. And so we take these things in our lives that we have experienced. Could be a toxic personality, could be a disease, could be grief, could be so many things. And we take those things in gratitude for the lessons that they have given us. Or if we look hard enough, there are truly lessons. And as we release that onto the universe and send it back into what I call its native nothingness, we open our hearts, our minds, the very core of our being to good, to progress, to peace, to love, to joy. And so I symbolically take this and cast those cares and woes into the eternal flame of purification and of enlightenment. If each of you would come up with your list. There's a brave woman.
All of those things. Big funny face.
Perfect. Yep. That's good. Could you play something?
Oh, sure. Why don't we all just sing along to...
You don't have to sing along, just thank you. Atta girl, you know the drill. Just drop it on in there. That's good. Even better. Oh, yep, you're good. Do that. There we go. Perfect. Pray without ceasing. It's pray for him. I'm serious. Anywhere, I'll collect them later. You're doing good. Uh-oh. Whoops. Perfect. Thank you, sir. Perfect. Even better. Thank you, Peter. Not yet. Tomorrow. It's a good thing the place is made of brick. Don't cook your fingers. You know, I just had an interesting experience that I wanted to share, and this falls under I sometimes think I'm Jack Palance because I love that show he was on before he passed away, Believe It or Not. I mentioned to you I have a background in metaphysics, and my father used to call my metaphysics hocus pocus. And you may too, but I will give you the secret of overcoming anyone in your life that is a pain in your proverbial rump roast. It's not my idea. It comes out of Judeo-Christian scripture. It actually comes from most scriptures. If someone is in your life that is, in your opinion, wreaking some havoc in your experience, I encourage you to think good thoughts about them, an attitude of positivity. People say, how can I do that? I hate their guts. That's the problem. That's adding to the problem, not to the solution. I used to teach this years ago. If you send out, so to speak, if you'll bear with me, the idea of positive thoughts, pray, if I may use that word, for their highest good and something better. What that does, and again, I'm just rattling off a little hocus pocus here, is it establishes within you a center of gravity that is like a force field against negativity, and at the same time draws into your experience and expression positivity. Now, you might think, again, as my dear father did, that that's hocus pocus. My attitude toward you is, I'm sorry you feel that way. Don't knock it till you try it. So in the coming weeks, months, what have you got to lose? Somebody you don't like, somebody you might even hate. I remember one time sitting in a Unitarian Universalist church during the time of, dare I say his name, George W. And every person was, and I said, anybody ever thought of praying for George? Praying that he makes the right decisions, affirming that he's got good advisors and so forth? You would think I had landed from another planet. Nobody thought of that. I said, I would encourage giving it a try. You might see some interesting results, but my opinion, only you can prevent forest fires. No, that's what I did. No, only you can, well, only you can prevent the forest fire in your heart and in your head. And if you calmly and gently do what I've suggested, I would be astonished if any of you could come to me by this time next year. You will invite me back for next year, won't you?
Well,
Okay.
I will.
You're going to tell me some interesting stories. I guarantee. But thank you for participating in that service, and I hope it was cathartic, and I hope it was meaningful unto you. I've done a few of these services this year already. I did one Friday night for a congregation. And my wife says, why do you, this time of year, always smell like smoked meat? Lots of fire, baby, lots of fire. So, does anyone have any announcements that need to be made before we conclude our service today? Anything that I am not aware of or? Okay, very good. Please, if you'll join us after the service, we have some goodies and food and coffee and probably soda pop or something, and we'd really love to fellowship with you. And in some cases, it may be the only solid food you eat before you start drinking later, so please stay with us. No. And I will be, just to warn you, I will be with you next Sunday as well. When we were working out the schedule, they didn't realize that they put me on New Year's Eve and then scheduled me, which I usually preach every first Sunday of the month. So I will be here on the 7th. So let your conscience be your guide. But let us conclude our service today by rising and singing in the true spirit of ringing out the old and ringing in the new, an extraordinary traditional anthem. Now, Patty's got here a song by Rod Stewart. I can assure you he didn't write this song. He might want to have written it, but I don't even remember who it was. It wasn't.
John Kilpatrick.
Yeah, him. Well, with all due respect to Rod Stewart. So, to those of you who are able and willing, please let us rise and rousingly ring out the old and even more rousingly ring in the new as we conclude our service before our closing benediction, Auld Lang Syne.
Just the first verse.
Just the first verse?
Yeah, because Rod Stewart put in copious
What you mean? You mean like just one, not 2 or 3 or 4 or 5?
Yeah, that's the Rod Stewart version.
You don't have any courage. I'm teasing you. All right, we're going to do how about the first and second verse?
All righty.
All right, let's do the sing. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and days of auld lang syne? For auld lang syne, my dear, for auld lang syne, we'll drink a cup of kindness yet for the sake of auld lang syne.
And there's a majestic air,
And surely I'll buy mine. We'll take a cup of kindness yet for the sake of auld lang syne. Auld lang syne, my dear, for auld lang syne, we'll drink a cup of kindness yet for auld lang syne. As we have gathered in the very midst of the spirit of life, we covenant with it and with each other to go forth out into the world, to help co-create a world that works for everyone, to experience more love, more joy, more unity than we have in the past year, and our ever-rising aspiration, our ever-rising commitment to peace within ourselves, peace throughout the world, love and loving kindness. And so it is, and so we choose it and are determined for it to be. Amen. If you'll now take and read your extinguishing words. The words aren't extinguishing, but the chalice extinguishing. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Oh, that's it.
Postlude.
Okay, so the postlude must include y'all. I'll do the intro, and I'm sure you will recognize this, and I'm sure you already have it memorized. Well, I would hope, being
Okay.
American. While the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us swear allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Does this mean you gotta come back this week?